thank you to everyone who helped me make this joyous celebration of our culture possible. I'm thrilled about what's ahead and the rich discussions we're going to have. Heritage Week is all about celebrating the vibrant Pakistani community worldwide and exploring the unique journeys that define our experiences as Pakistanis. This week is especially significant, inspired by our Pakistani Independence Day on August 14th, and we mark the 15th anniversary of the American Pakistan Foundation. It's a tribute to all those who have supported APF over the years. It is now my pleasure to introduce Maha Butt, who will be leading today's webinar.
Thanks so much, Iman, for that lovely introduction and for educating us about Heritage Week and the vision behind it. I would now like to invite Dr. Nasar Qureshi, Chair of the Board of Directors at APF, Chief Medical Officer at QD Pathology Services, and former President of the Association of Physicians of Pakistani Descent in North America, to deliver his opening remarks and share more about APF on its 15th anniversary. Over to you, Dr. Q.
Thank you so much, Maha. Thank you, Iman. I think we will all agree that 14th August is a special day for every Pakistani American. It is a day to honor the sacrifices of our parents, of our grandparents. They made for the independence of Pakistan, to cherish the founders and their vision, and the rich cultural heritage which we are blessed with. This year, as Iman said, we also proudly celebrate 15 years of American Pakistan Foundation. The mission of APF is to empower the Pakistan American community through fostering leadership, youth development, civic engagement, and building bridges between Pakistan and the United States. I request and hope that the entire Pakistani American community will join hands in building a community which we are proud of, whose immense contributions to the fabric of everyday life of Americans is recognized, and equally, if not more importantly, our future generations cherish and try and take pride in their heritage and being identified as a Pakistani American. That is really where the Leadership Council that we have been building for the last 4 years with American Pakistan Foundation comes into play, and we'll hear a little bit more about it when the current chair of Leadership Council, Ammad, speaks later. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ambassador Jadoon, who joined us at a short notice because Ambassador Munir Akram was called to present at the Security Council at a short notice. We have Dr. Adil Najam, who of course does not need any introduction in the Pakistani community, at least, leave alone not just the Pakistani community. We have with us Dr. Syra Madad, who is one of our board members and immensely recognized for her work in public health and otherwise. We have Ammad, who just joined as a global, I will not say the term right, but he will be introduced. But he's an amazing young Pakistani, and he's leading the Leadership Council. We have Iman Zahir, who I would like to profusely thank, along with who has organized the entire Heritage Week with the help of a lot of others, including Maha herself, and our Director of Operations, Henry Elfin, who has worked very, very hard to make this vision of the Executive Committee, which was then transferred to Leadership Council, who expanded it to a whole week of Heritage Week, which sounded music to our ears, has made that happen. So thank you, everyone. And Maha, back to you.
Thank you so much for your remarks, Dr. Qureshi. It's truly an honor to be part of this vibrant community on the auspicious occasion of Pakistan's 77th Independence Day. I would now like to invite our esteemed speaker, the Ambassador Jadoon, who is also the Deputy Permanent Representative of Pakistan to the UN, to share some remarks about the Pakistani American diaspora and the spirit of Pakistan that thrives in the US. Over to you, Ambassador Jadoo.
Thank you very much. It is really a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Dr. Qureshi, for providing us this opportunity, essentially for the permanent mission of Pakistan to the UN to share what we do here, which is service to Pakistan and to the Pakistanis in general in terms of our engagement with the UN. So that's where I will concentrate most of my remarks on. Ambassador Munir Akram sends his best wishes and greetings and regrets very much that he wasn't able to join. But what I will share with you is essentially more or less along the lines of what he had asked me to be known in this gathering. We very much appreciate the American Pakistani Foundation, which is a very vital organization playing a pivotal role in the promotion of relations between the United States and Pakistan. This is one of our most important and one of our most intense bilateral relationships. And as you're aware, the Pakistani government is deeply committed to reinforcing this, our historic ties with the US. The celebration of the Heritage Week that you are doing, a remarkable initiative. We are sure it will contribute to a fuller understanding of the rich history, culture, and our own vibrant and dynamic society. So thank you very much for organizing this. You're in fact supplementing and complementing our work in the US. As I said in the beginning, the permanent mission of Pakistan to the UN is essentially Pakistan's representation to the United Nations, the largest global intergovernmental organization. And our engagement with the UN reflects a lot of our ethos, how our diplomacy or how as a nation we've shaped up in terms of our international relations over the years. We place a lot of emphasis and a lot of importance towards multilateralism, towards UN as an organization, because to states like Pakistan, it provides a very solid framework of governing interstate relations. The principles, the immutable principles laid out in the Charter on sovereign equality, peaceful settlement of disputes, non-use of force, the right to self-determination, by exercising that right, Pakistan came into being. These are all very, not just lofty ideals, but these are the basis of, they underwrite the entire world order. Our great leader, Quaid-e-Azam, our founding father, already gave us very crucial guidance in the beginning of right after independence, where he himself said that we will always be, you will never find Pakistan lacking in supporting the oppressed or the countries that are seeking decolonization. And he also committed our adherence to the UN Charter and its principles. This has been a central principle, this has been a central part of our foreign policy throughout. The right to self-determination is also very relevant in the context of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. As you're aware, starting from 1st January 1949 onwards, a series of resolutions were adopted by the UN Security Council, guaranteeing the right to self-determination of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, for them to determine their own fate through a UN-supervised plebiscite. This is one of our core objectives at the UN, to promote this right for Kashmiris. Despite the challenges of geopolitics and the changing regional dynamic, we have always held very steadfast to promoting the Kashmir cause and continue to do so to this day. All its various dimensions. It's the implementation of the Security Council resolutions, the need to maintain regional and international peace and security, to uphold and promote and protect the human rights of the people living in the occupied territory, and also its legal dimensions of the failed annexation attempt by India and its illegal efforts to change the demography of the occupied territory, etc. Then the UN is also an arena where several other interests of Pakistan also come into play. In our own regional context, there's Afghanistan, there's the issue of counterterrorism, and then also our primary priority these days to promote economic and social development. We are living in very difficult times. You have seen the resurgence in big power rivalries. It's once again, there is more emphasis being laid on building blocks and projecting national power, and there's virtually been a breakdown of cooperation between the big powers. that resulted from the end of the Cold War. And this is very much prominent in the UN today. It's whether it's the war in Ukraine or the war in Gaza or the overall environment in the UN. But within this overall framework, for countries like Pakistan, and Pakistan plays a very crucial role in this, to not let the UN lose its eye on the need to promote sustainable development. And Pakistan has held very key positions in this. We have served as the chair of the Economic and Social Council for 4 times. We have also headed the Group of 77 in China. Even now, we are leading a like-minded group of countries which is promoting reform of the international financial architecture in a way which makes it more equitable, more responsive to developing countries, more development-oriented, more oriented towards countries which are in debt distress or in climate distress. And the bottom line is to make sure that there is concessional financing available to countries in need. I mentioned Afghanistan. It's a neighbor with which we have very deep historic, religious, cultural ties. We have seen the Taliban come back to power and essentially reneging on some of their initial commitments to the international community and to Pakistan, especially in terms of counterterrorism. Today, we see a resurgence of terrorism from Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, TTP, in collusion with ISIL and also with Al-Qaeda, and enjoying impunity or at least some sort of protection from the Afghan Taliban. And there is also a lot of concern in the international community about the Taliban's record on human rights, particularly women's and girls' rights, and the right of women and girls to go to schools and get educated. And within this entire milieu, Pakistan has tried to keep its priorities clear. On the one hand, we support the continuation of humanitarian assistance to the Afghan people. We also support efforts for revival of the economy of Afghanistan and for it to be integrated or normalized into the international community. But at the same time, we also expect them and through the UN utilize all available opportunities to have them respond fully to the genuine concerns in terms of counterterrorism or even human rights or inclusive governance, etc. We are also undertaking efforts through the UN to promote infrastructure connectivity projects, etc. Counterterrorism, of course, remains one of our top priorities. We have suffered greatly, lost a lot of life and treasure in the global war against terror, and then lately from this resurgence of terrorism from Afghanistan. I don't know if many of you are aware, but Pakistan will commence a term on the UN Security Council starting from 1st January 2025. This is a 2-year non-permanent term. In June, we got elected with an overwhelming majority of 182 countries to serve this 2-year term. And in this tenure, we will utilize it to essentially draw attention to the unresolved dispute of Jammu and Kashmir, to the threat of terrorism from Afghanistan, to bring more stability to Afghanistan, to overall promote regional and international peace and security, including through CT action, counterterrorism action, but also peacekeeping where it is required and peace building where that is necessary. The UN Charter essentially has 2 objectives. One is to maintain and build peace and security, and the second is to build better standards of life. As I mentioned, oftentimes what makes headlines is the peace and security dimension, but not so much the better standards of life dimension. This is also where Pakistan has been very active and has promoted. Pakistan was always active in this domain, but lately it has assumed greater importance because of our own economic conditions, the debt stress, the debt burden that we face, and the climate challenge that we face. So we are doing a lot of work in the UN to promote reform of the international financial institutions, but also make the UN more responsive to the needs of developing countries and to leverage the new technologies, AI, digital transformations, just energy transitions, climate finance, hybrid finance. There's a series of proposals and measures which are being promoted through the UN platform. Lastly, I know I'm running out of time. Something about Security Council reform. Also, one of the major issues that we follow at the United Nations is how to reform the Security Council in a way which makes it more democratic, more equitable, more fair, more representative. Currently, with the P5 holding veto power and only 10 elected members, there's a huge imbalance, and oftentimes we see a paralysis of the council. Pakistan is a strong proponent of reforming the council, but not by creating new centers of privilege, not by adding new permanent members with veto power, but to make it more democratic and make it more accountable to the wider membership, the all 193 countries. And we play a very important and key role here. To sum up, the idea of our engagement, or the very bottom line of our engagement with the UN, is to seek a fair, just, and equitable world in order, where all peoples, all nations can enjoy peace and prosperity, and to also leverage this, our membership, for protecting and promoting Pakistan's core national interests, be it in the peace and security domain, in the sustainable development domain, or in the areas of human rights. Really a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Jadun, for sharing your insightful comments regarding the important work that the mission does with the UN. Speaking of the UN, I just had one very quick follow-up. How important is it for Pakistan to have its culture and heritage represented in international forums such as the UN? And what are some of the ways we can achieve this?
Sure, thank you. Maha, because you've also done an internship at the UN, I often tell my colleagues that merely being a professional diplomat represents your country and your culture. If you're well-dressed and if you show up on time and you engage professionally and you represent your country well, whether you agree with them or not, is a very good ambassadorship for your country. It's a very good representation of your culture. Oftentimes, I judge diplomats from other countries merely on their appearance and how they present their arguments, or how well prepared or ill prepared they are. So a diplomat going to the UN representing his country in a befitting manner is in itself a very good cultural representation. But more specifically, on the ordinary mundane meaning of cultural representation, countries go to great lengths to project their soft power. And we are blessed with a lot of capital in that sense. We have a very rich, vibrant culture, and this can be promoted at the UN through various side events, through organizing some sort of exhibition or a concert, or show them our traditional music, our traditional arts and crafts. We do make an attempt within our meager resources to do this. But if we could team up with the Pakistani diaspora, the very vibrant American Pakistani diaspora, or organizations like yours, we can certainly make a bigger difference. And this is not only, it carries a lot of intangible value, which we sometimes overlook. So very happy to discuss this further with you. I think there's a lot of potential there.
Completely agree. Thank you so much, Ambassador Jadun, for your comments. And these are definitely great ideas, and we would love to discuss further. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Syra Madad, a public health expert, epidemiologist in infectious disease and special pathogens, and Chief Biopreparedness Officer at New York Health and Hospitals, to share her experience with APF and her visions for women empowerment programs. Over to you, Syra.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Maha, for that kind introduction. Assalamu alaikum. It's wonderful to be here with you all. So I'm just going to start off by sharing a few facts about myself and why women empowerment is just so important to me. So I'm a first-generation Pakistani American. I'm also the first-generation woman in my family to actually pursue higher education, both on my father's side and my mother's side. So I understand the unique challenges and incredible opportunities that come with navigating both worlds. It is this journey that fuels my passion for empowering women, particularly within the Pakistani American community. As a champion of women empowerment myself, I've had the unique privilege to create and lead Harvard University's Belfer Center's Women in STEM program, and I actively work towards promoting and empowering our current and next generation of female leaders. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather, so my voice may be a little cracking. Today, I'm incredibly proud to be part of the American Pakistani Foundation as a board member and leading the APF's Rising Stars program. And I want to share with you why this program is just so impactful and so important to myself. So a couple of things just I want to mention is last year, this initiative was a huge success with 75 nominations and 15 remarkable females that were selected. The program, which was started by Anna Khan, highlights APF's unwavering commitment to recognizing women who are making meaningful contributions, not only within the Pakistani community, but also the broader American society. The Rising Stars program, with the theme this year being Women Empowering Women, is more than just about recognition. It's about cultivating a community of women who are empowered to inspire and drive the change we all seek. It's about building a network of Pakistani women who support each other, who lift each other up, and pave the way for those who follow. So I'm happy to share that the call for nominations this year for the Rising Stars program is now live. So this is an incredible opportunity to shine a light on women in our community who are breaking barriers, making a difference, and leading with courage and conviction. So I encourage each of you to think about a woman in your life who deserves this recognition, who is changing the world by building bridges, opening minds, and empowering communities, and to nominate them. Thank you, Maha.
Thank you so much for your thoughts and vision, Dr. Madad. I completely resonate with the fact that it is women such as yourself who have to empower and uplift other women in the diaspora through programs such as Rising Stars, and I thank you in your efforts for doing so. Now I would like to call Ammad Mahmood, APF Leadership Council Chair and Global Head of Corporate Insurance at American International Group, to share the inspirational work that the Leadership Council has been involved in and his vision for the upcoming months. Over to you, Ammad.
Thank you so much, Maha, and it is I'm humbled because I'm part of this amazing group of Pakistani Americans, and to be able to share some of my thoughts is humbling experience. I'll give a little bit about who I am, where I came from, and then we'll talk a little bit about Leadership Council as well. I'm born and raised in Pakistan. I'm a Pindi boy, born in Rawalpindi. I came here when I was 13. I went through public schooling through Queens, in the Queens sort of public school system. I went to Baruch College here in the city, and I give you that background because I've had to sort of struggle and survive and thrive on my own. My dad is a small business owner, much like many other Pakistanis. So as I kind of went through my career progression, and was able to do some of the things that I've been able to do, it sort of dawned on me that I should give back some of my time, whether it's through engagements like this or otherwise, to try and build sort of that next generation of Pakistani Americans, to give them the pathway for them to be successful as well. And that's how I kind of ended up with APF a few years ago. Took on a fairly sort of involved role earlier this year as the inaugural chair of the Leadership Council, and through that I've had the opportunity to meet with some truly amazing Pakistani Americans, and there's so many similar themes that I've heard throughout this year, which is individuals who themselves or their families came from nothing, came to America with nothing, and now have become something so impressive just by hard work and dedication. So Dr. Qureshi talked about the overall mission of APF. To me, the mission for the Leadership Council is very simple. It's how do we unite and gather as many successful Pakistanis together to go help other Pakistanis, and over time just grow the circle of friends and family. That's really it. And there's sort of three different categories or ideas or work streams that we're accomplishing this today, and we will be accomplishing going forward. The first theme is around career development, which is something near and dear to me. How do we think about mentorship programs, internship programs, coaching, et cetera, where we partner up successful Pakistanis with folks who are early on in their career, maybe in colleges, maybe even in high school. We're now tapping into that segment as well. The second category is very highly applicable this year, which is all about civic engagement. We need to have a voice when it comes to the sort of the political spectrum, and it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you want to lean on, but it's really important for you to go out and make your voice heard through whatever means are available in a democratic country. So we have some amazing individuals working on Get Out the Vote for 2024, and making sure that we do make a difference when it comes to November this year. And then the last work stream is all about amplification of the voices of the Pakistani diaspora. So through that, we've done a collection of webinars already highlighting some successful Pakistanis and the amazing work they've done. And we have a pretty impressive programming coming up for Q3 and Q4 for this year. So I'll end with sort of basically where I started, which is I'm humbled to be part of this conversation, but I've also been truly humbled by meeting so many amazing Pakistanis and sort of moving the mission, the APF mission forward, and I look forward to doing that for the rest of this year. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ammad. We truly are thankful for the inspirational work you do with the Leadership Council and, of course, for your leadership itself. Our last speaker for today is Dr. Adil Najam, President of the World Wildlife Fund for Nature and Dean Emeritus and Professor of International Relations and Earth and Environment at the Pardee School of Global Studies at Boston University. Dr. Najam, I welcome you to share your thoughts on preserving Pakistan's cultural heritage through sustainable practices and ways to empower the youth through education and awareness. My first question for you is, how has your role as the president of WWF shaped your perspective on global environmental challenges, particularly those facing Pakistan?
Thank you very much. I'm humbled. I'm humbled by the company, and I'm very grateful to APF for doing what you're doing. Your question is very interesting. In some ways, I would say I'm not sure my role as WWF president has shaped my views. I think my views, I hope, has shaped the path that took me to this place. And those views have been shaped as a Pakistani, as a person from a developing country who's been working on issues of environment and climate as they relate to humans and human development and the well-being of our species. Right, in a world where we somehow define ourselves by countries and flags and so on and so forth, our essence as a species is also something that is very, very vital to what happens to us, and especially to the most vulnerable amongst us. And that is where a Pakistani perspective, and having worked all my life and grown up in Pakistan, becomes particularly profound, because you see that impact. Right? For many of us, we are blessed because nature, not blessed, we are actually not blessed. But for many of us, unfortunately, nature is something out there, something that you sit in a car and pay a ticket and then go to see and then take some Instagram photographs. For the majority of the world, including the majority of Pakistan, nature is where you live. Nature is what you base your life on. Nature is where your livelihood is. Nature is where your food comes from. Nature is where your water comes from. Nature is what you breathe. Nature is the difference between whether you live or not, right? And so that's a perspective that I think has grown with me through my intellectual life, and I hope I bring to WWF.
Thank you so much for your thoughts. And I really like the fact that it's not WWF that changed you, but rather your vision that you brought to WWF in leading that headspace. So thank you so much for that. My next question for you is, how do you think cultural heritage shapes the identities of Pakistan, both in Pakistan and abroad?
This is a question. I'm going to change my background just because I was. It'll take me back to Pakistan and also help me sort of put some photographs in there of what I want to say. I think that question is a very important one, and I think we should also explore what we mean by heritage. Right? Is heritage the thing that we left behind? I speak of this as someone who has worked on this subject. Many years ago, I wrote a book called The Portrait of a Giving Community, which is published by Harvard University Press, which is about the Pakistani diaspora in the US and what it is and who it is. And I can challenge nearly everyone that who we think we are actually more. And our sense of self has been shaped in much narrower ways than it ought to. And this is a particularly important thing, right? In some ways, I would be remiss not to talk about the 14th of August, which is just about to come, and we think of heritage, and we don't need to wait for the 14th of August to think of heritage. Right. And this is a particularly good 14th of August because thank you, Nadeem Arshad, and the amazing performance that brought him and Pakistan and all of us into prominence at the Olympic Games that just finished yesterday. But the point about heritage that I want to make is that, in fact, at this point, with about 1 million Pakistanis in America, right, of multiple generations, I would say some of them, and this is what the book was about, are in their 5th generation. Some might say that's not possible, but it is. The first Pakistanis came to America about 150 years ago, which is before there was a Pakistan, but which is when the region that is now Pakistan was very much there. And so in some ways, we think of heritage not as something, we should think of heritage not as something we left behind when we came here and we are trying to connect. At this point, I think that heritage is being defined by Pakistani Americans themselves, right? And I'm not being trivial here. You see it in the economics, whether it's the economics of remittances, which frankly, Pakistani Americans are not as big players as Pakistani elsewhere, diaspora elsewhere. But you see it in culture, you see it in politics, you see it on YouTube. Because of our outlandish spending power, we can have outlandish influences, not always good, on the country itself. If you or your parents who are watching spend a lot of time watching Pakistani dramas on YouTube or television, know that you are affecting them because you are such an important client, right? All these singers who come, they are not singing the songs they're singing there. They are taking, because we have power to influence. We are literally changing music. Pakistanis in Britain and Indian Punjabis in Britain essentially changed South Asian music in South Asia because of that. Right? There is a new generation now through education and others that is changing that. So my apologies for the longest response, but and for being professorial here. But the point I'm making is that I think we are actually redefining that heritage many times in good ways. And we have a responsibility to understand that just like we think of, different parts of Pakistan as being part of our heritage, today the Pakistani heritage includes the heritage of the diaspora as it has emerged and wherever it has emerged.
That's a very, very interesting take to think about how the Pakistani American diaspora itself has its own heritage and how it actually influences the heritage back in Pakistan. But speaking of Pakistan's heritage itself going back 77 years now, how do you think we can preserve that cultural heritage through more sustainable practices? Is there conversations about this at WWF or in other arenas?
Yes, so sustain can be used in multiple ways, right? So one sustain is when we think about sort of Pakistanis in America, I think we should be very, very, very cognizant that there is a yesterday, there's a today, and there's a tomorrow, and those are evolving time spans, right? That what we understood ourselves and our heritage to be yesterday is not what it is today, and is not what it will be tomorrow. You mentioned 77 years, and I go back to this idea that the Pakistani American predates that. So little known fact, before there was Pakistan, and while the independence movement in then India was being struggled, there was a hearing in Congress in which there were Americans of heritage from that part of the world who testified both around India questions and Pakistan questions. Right? So the question is, what are we sustaining? And that can be used in at least two ways. One is an environmental term, right? The sustaining nature, sustaining the ecosystem, and so on and so forth. And I hope we at least sustain what I call the most beautiful Pakistanis. I can't see the audience, but if I did, I would ask them, who do they think the most beautiful Pakistanis are? I can give you my list. There is Bullern. I don't know if any of you have seen Bullern, but you should. Bullern is one of the most beautiful Pakistani ever. Bullern is in English called the Indus Blind Dolphin. There is the Markhor. There is the snow leopard, right? Who call Pakistan home. And that is as much part of the heritage that we should be sustaining as the dress, as the food, as the language, as the culture. But I again go back to this thing before I end on that the Pakistanis in America are themselves defining a heritage that is now Pakistan's. Heritage is not static. What I would argue, and again, maybe I'm becoming too conceptual here, but I hope not. I do not think we should be sustaining, freezing in time, some notion of heritage that our grandparents or parents had of what a Pakistani is supposed to look like or act like or dress like or talk like or eat like. That is not true in Pakistan itself. And that is not true of the Pakistani American, but it's also not true of the Pakistani. Right? What we need to do is to embrace that evolution. Last thought, just to surprise your folks. I talked about the most beautiful Pakistani. Let me ask you a question. Who do you think is the most successful and accomplished Pakistani American ever? Maybe Dr. Nasar Qureshi or Ammar or someone else can also join in. Maybe you don't want to answer that question. I will.
I'm going to take a guess.
Do you think? Maybe Ambassador Jidoon can tell us. Ever the most accomplished, most famous, most successful Pakistani American that we've had?
I'm going to take a wild guess. Is it
Make
the
a
owner
guess.
of the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Whose name is Shahid, right?
Shahid, right.
Except we don't remember the name always. We remember the Jaguar. Okay, I think he will make the list of maybe the top 20. Yes, certainly.
Okay,
wonderful. Who else? Who am I thinking of, Jidoon sir? The most famous Pakistani American in your world.
In my world, it would be Munir Akram.
Pakistan, not Pakistani American, right?
A Pakistani American.
So I know I'm taking this over, and it's an unfair question.
Really
It's an
tough
unfair
one,
question,
yeah.
right? You have a professor. Let me give you an answer. And I don't know if Nasir sir would agree with me or your audience will, but let me give you an answer just to shock you. I think one of the most accomplished Pakistani Americans ever was immigrant number 3 to receive American citizenship on behalf of Pakistani heritage, right? This goes back to the stories I tell in my book on Pakistani Americans. And immigrant number 3, right? So the third person ever who gained US citizenship by claiming Pakistani heritage was a person called Sabu Dastagir. Now, if you do not know him, that's your fault, not his. Sabu Dastagir was a leading actor in over 70 Hollywood movies. He is a war veteran of the Second World War, decorated by the US Congress. He grew up as a young boy in what is now Mysore. But by the time 47 comes around, when the Asian Debarment Act is removed and immigration on that basis becomes possible, he is number 3 who claims that and becomes a US citizen. The reason I say that is not Sabu Dastagir, and obviously my question was unfair, Shahid Saab and others, and there's so many who've done so much wonderful work. But what I'm trying to do to this audience is to say, you have a much deeper, richer, thicker, more amazing heritage, both here and in Pakistan, than you might imagine. Embrace all of it, right? I have grown to sort of like wearing these printed shirts. One of the reasons is little known fact. Your audience would know the Hawaiian shirt, right? Especially in this weather, they are worn a lot. The Hawaiian shirt was brought to the US and became a business sensation in the US, was made a business sensation in the US by 2 brothers born in Hyderabad, Sindh. Right? This is now, again, before there was what we now call a Pakistan. So there are umpteen ideas, right? Certainly of football teams, certainly of information technology, certainly in the realm of business, certainly whether it is Atif Mia or Rasim Khaja or others in the realm of scholarship. But it is all around us in the realm of philanthropy, right? And if we are going to embrace Pakistani heritage, then we need to do it not in a cardboard fashion, but in a true and deep fashion in that sense.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Najam. So I think our main takeaway for today is to gracefully embrace the ever-evolving meaning of heritage and accepting it with open arms, whether it's the Pakistani American diaspora or Pakistan's heritage itself. Moving on to my next question, I know your work at WWF would involve working very closely with the youth and with women and minorities and other communities. How do you think we can empower youth in communities through education and awareness about cultural heritage preservation?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. And that question is especially important, I think, today. Today, as you may know, is World Youth Day, International Youth Day. So congratulations, everyone. Today is also International Elephant Day, and that's the WWF plug. And I don't think there's a connection between the two, but the youth question is very important. And this morning I've been posting on Twitter about that, partly because some years ago I was the lead author of the Pakistan Human Development Report, which was on the question of youth. Youth is a particularly important question for Pakistan. It is a question that's important for every country, but it's particularly important for Pakistan because Pakistan is one of the youngest countries in the world as far as young people are concerned, right? And so that's work that I've been doing in this realm, and that's the Pakistan Human Development Report. If you put every Pakistani in a row, 2 out of 3 of them. So if you put every Pakistani in a room in one row, 2 out of every 3 will be under 30 years of age, right? That's both the challenge, that's the opportunity, that's also the threat. The question before Pakistan, and including here in the US amongst Pakistan, it's also a very young diaspora, is this going to be a youth bonanza, or a youth bomb? It can go either way. Right? And in many ways, I will end with this. This is just a demographic reality. It's a reality of the demographic we have, right? We are going to remain a young country till about 2050. Every election between now and 2050 in Pakistan is going to be decided by young people, by new voters. After that, we become a fairly aged country. Then I'll write a different report. But to come back to your question, and it's a very important question. Let me challenge you a bit to say, I don't think the question is empowering youth. I don't think young people are asking to be empowered. It'll be good if you can. I think they're asking us to get out of the way. I think they're asking us not to slow them down. Cheer them, encourage them, clap for them. But for God's sake, by God, get out of the way.
Thank you. I think that is a very important sentiment that I'm sure a lot of the youth have been experiencing lately, and having encouragement from people like yourself is the
and by the way, if I can just add, that's what Nadeem Arshad did, right? By getting out of the way, I don't mean other people, older people are not important. These young people will be older by the time your podcast ends, right? That's the reality of age. But there is a power in the passions of the young that we saw in Arshad Nadeem and we can see everywhere that I think needs to be unleashed fruitfully.
Completely agreed. I completely echo those thoughts. Nadeem Arshad is the epitome of youth empowerment, having someone with limited resources representing Pakistan at such a big platform, and then winning the goal. It's something the entire country should be proud of and also gain inspiration from. So thank you for your remarks. My last question to you, Dr. Najam, is how can organizations and nonprofits such as APF collaborate with WWF to enhance environmental awareness and conservation efforts among the Pakistani diaspora within the US?
There are lots and lots of stuff. WWF works. We work in 100 countries, over 100 countries. We have offices in over 40 countries, and there are all sorts of programs, including in one of our biggest offices here in the U.S. And it's a grassroots movement. It's a nonprofit in itself that really thrives and builds on the connections with communities. Right? Plant a tree. Plant a tree, save a species, reduce your emissions, waste less. All of those things are things in which these partnerships can be made. It goes back to your youth question, right? Either we are going to tackle the great challenges of our times out of fear, or we are going to tackle them out of the energy of knowing that we can do better. Right? For us at WWF, the idea is much more that we should be doing it because we can as a species. We have a responsibility as a species because we've kind of become Superman. So, we are like Hulk. We grew so much. Right? The same things that made us prosperous are now enveloping us in danger, are now endangering our own species. And that's why we should be acting. And in that, partnerships, whether they are with APF, whether they are with local community organizations, are extremely important always.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Najam, for your time, and to all of our panelists for their important and inspirational remarks. I have one very quick question I would personally like to ask Ambassador Jadoon before we open it up to questions from our attendees. Ambassador Jadoon. So because you work very closely with the UN and the mission does a lot of cultural exchange programs and work with the UN as well. We are now in an era of globalization, and I was wondering how globalization, in your opinion, has influenced Pakistani culture, and what steps can be taken to preserve traditional values while embracing modernity and going ahead with, the entire world and its values.
Yes, Ambassador Jadoon just left for, I think, 2-3 minutes. And he will be back. I have noted down your question, and he will respond as soon as he comes back.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to hand it over to Khadija, who will be moderating the questions in the chat. Over to you, Khadija.
Thank you, Maha. So we have quite a few questions for you, really great questions. The first one is, what do you think are the most significant opportunities and challenges for Pakistan in the next decade?
Who do you want to take this?
You can go ahead.
Yeah,
It's for any panelist. Anyone.
In some ways there are so many, and we spend so much time thinking about so many that we cause a problem for ourselves, right? Because then you get stunned. It's like sort of deer in the headlights. I have argued, including in recent writings, that that it goes back to the question that Maha had asked me earlier about young people. I think the future of Pakistan, good, bad, or ugly, is going to be defined by those who are between 18 and 29 years of age today. And I'm being very careful here, good or bad. That doesn't mean sab bhala changa. Right? History defines this. It is just a demographic reality. And there is a responsibility for those who have the levers of power, whether in Pakistan or outside Pakistan, but there is also a responsibility for those who are young. They will not always be young. Very soon, just like they are pointing fingers at my generation, a new generation might be pointing fingers at them if they don't use this moment right. But I think that's where the greatest opportunity is. I think that's where the greatest challenge is.
I think what I'll quickly add is a similar sort of wavelength, high level. There needs to be some element of stability, whether that's political stability or economic stability, that has to come about in Pakistan. And I think over time, some of the other issues will, like job creations and growth of the economy and and whatever else, right? Before we can tackle some of those other issues, we need stability in Pakistan, and hopefully over the next 10 years, we will see some resemblance of that. And I think the next generation is patiently waiting for that to come about so then they can start to do their part and taking Pakistan forward.
Thank you so much. We have a question for Syra. Thank you for your thoughts on APF Rising Stars and empowering women. How can we boost the confidence of women to seek board member roles to influence organizational outcomes?
Was a question on board member roles?
Correct. And how can we boost the confidence of women to seek that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And as someone who sits on a few different boards, I can tell you it's not certainly very easy. And these are opportunities that are very few for select females in particular. And I think the first thing I would say is understanding your self-worth and understanding that we all have these opportunities and we should all seek them. So it's not as if, you know, one person really is better than the other. I think we're all very well positioned depending on what our background is. And it's really just feeling empowered to know that, you know, this is my self-worth and this is what I can bring to the table. And if you're not being asked, for example, there's no harm in asking yourself. I think there are many times where we, you know, don't want to seek an opportunity because we think it's going to be a no. And that's the worst case scenario, right? Is that you're going to just, someone's going to say, no, we can't offer you the seat. So there's no harm in going and asking and seeking that opportunity yourself. So going ahead and reaching out, whether it's to a contact, a network, or to the organization and sharing who you are and what you bring to the table and seeing if it's a good fit. There's no harm in doing that. And again, the worst case scenario is that they say no. So I can tell you, as someone, as I mentioned, having a couple of board seats, you know, I've had the honor of being asked, but it's one of those things where you certainly want to seek it yourself as well, especially, you know, there's so many different organizations out there and many organizations try to have a, you know, a good, you know, 50-50 gender parity where you have females as well as males. And so many boards, unfortunately, still are male dominated. And so they are actively seeking females. And so I would say, feel empowered, share your self-worth, and go ahead and seek these opportunities.
Thank you so much. We have a question for Ammad. What are the biggest challenges of the APF Leadership Council in 2024, and how can anyone watching get involved?
I think the biggest challenge was, and this wasn't unique to us. This was sort of something that you saw across a lot of nonprofits, is going into COVID and then coming out of COVID, just re-energizing, restarting some of the programming. Obviously, you know, we went to 2-3 years of very limited in-person activity. So I think by far, when we started the year this year, we were literally starting from scratch, and I've heard people describe it as almost like a startup, that we just had to sort of get some of the basics down structure-wise before we can get moving. Going forward, I talked about the 3 channels, right? The career development, the civic engagement, the sort of the amplification, the community engagement element. I mean, the least you can do is just be active in your local community, form a nice circle of friends and family, and help one another. I think that's the bare minimum that anybody from Pakistan should be doing in America. On top of that, you can join an organization such as APF and give back in other ways, whether that's, you know, through some of the programming like the Rising Stars. Leadership Council is going to have other activities, especially geared towards youth development. Like, we're really trying to tap into the PSA community and get more active and get more involved there, because we want folks to sort of be part of that next generation that will take the baton forward. So getting involved is the easy part. And I hope more and more people are going to do it, because we're already seeing so much great activity out of the Leadership Council compared to where we were at the beginning of the year.
Thank you so much. Dr. Qureshi has his hand raised.
Thank you, Khadija. I think one of the most important and APF when Leadership Council was being started was the effort which is now being branded as APF1, which we are going to relaunch, is the mentorship aspiring Pakistanis. We provided mentorship with leaders all over the country. And now with the work of the Leadership Council, we are reorganizing it, rebranding it. And the vision behind that is that if you are a college student looking for summer internship, or you're just starting in your workforce, need guidance, need mentorship as to you want to go in law or medicine or international relations, or you want you have entrepreneurial thoughts and you want to start something. The Pakistani community has now between relative older generation and young people that we have in Leadership Council enough mental prowess to provide that, so we wouldn't have to look over years in 3-4 years towards anyone else but our own, what I call the fraternity of Pakistani Americans and Pakistani American youth, to be able to provide that. And if we are able to achieve that, I think that would be a major achievement of APF and its goals. Thank you, Khadija.
Thank you so much. We have one more question for Dr. Najam. What is the most critical leadership quality that young Pakistanis need to develop?
I wish I knew. I have no expertise in leadership, but thank you for the question. I am not sure the answer to that would be specific to Pakistanis, but if I were to think of qualities that any person, anywhere, at any time, maybe right now, top of my mind would be the willingness and the eagerness to put in the effort, to work hard. I have had a very charmed and blessed life. I have had the privilege of meeting many successful people, and I have found two things about them. One is every successful person, in whatever way you measure success, whether you measure it by prosperity or by intellect or by personality, whatever way you measure success. One is every successful person is very lucky. Things happen in their life that give them the opportunity that other good things happen to them. But the second is even more interesting. Every lucky person is a hard worker. Somehow, oddly, I've never met someone who's lucky but doesn't work hard, which makes me think that maybe that's a good place to start.
Okay, thank you.
So Dr. Najam resonates so directly to me, because luck is definitely a huge part of it. But putting yourselves into positions where you can get lucky is what you're referring to when you say hard work.
Dr. Qureshi, I see that you still have your hand up. Would you like to say something else? Okay, I think not. Those are all the questions we have for today, and I will turn this over to you, Maha. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to our lovely audience for their interesting questions. In the essence of time, we couldn't take everything, but I really wholeheartedly want to thank all our panelists today, Dr. Najam, Ammad, Syra, Ambassador Jadoon, Dr. Qureshi. We wholeheartedly thank you on behalf of APF for all your insightful comments, and thank you for joining us to celebrate Pakistan's 77th Independence Day, Heritage Week, and also APF's 15th anniversary. Thank you for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all, and best wishes.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for all the attendees for making time to attend the webinar. And of course, thank you for all the panelists for taking the time to join us.